Today, I want to follow up on my number one tip for runners, talking about running form. So I've revealed it. I think that's the number one tip, and now I want to start breaking down some of the points and trying to lay down some of the foundational aspects of running form and how we can all improve. I think one of the attractions of running is the fact that we can do it without you just go out and start running. There's not a lot to learn, but I think we do need to change that a little bit. I think we start thinking of running as a skill. And I think there are some things we need to learn to be able to run better. I mean, again, we can all put in more miles, we can do more strides, we can work on speed work, and all those things are helpful. But I think first and foremost, we need to have the proper running form in which we can do all those other things and build all those other things on top of. But the running form becomes the foundational thing. If we can improve our running form, then we can work on the other things and further enhance our ability to run further and faster, which it seems like we all have a tendency to want to do. So today I'm going to look at the end of October, my wife and I decided that we wanted to get our gait analysis. We both had injuries in 2021, and we wanted to see if there's some things that we could work on to improve our running form and therefore lessen our likelihood for injury, but also increase our performance. So we did that, and they came up with some suggestions. And so I'm going to start off with talking about some of the things that pointed out were positive, and some of the things that then we'll talk about some of the things I think I could work on. So the other thing is that I have transitioned over a period of time. I used to wear what I'll say is a standard running shoe with a pretty high heel to toe drop and a regular running shoe where it's kind of tight in the front. So I've transitioned to ultras. I primarily wear ultras because of the natural foot shape of their shoe, and I've gone to a zero drop. Now that was not an easy transition. In fact, I'll at some point talk about some of the mistakes I made. In fact, I actually got a stress fracture in doing that because I transitioned way too fast. Because not only did I wear the traditional running shoe with stabilization, but I also wore custom-made orthotics that I had wore in my shoe for 30 some years. They are very hard, very firm, made for me, and I used those. So I tried to transition from those to natural zero drop foot shape running shoes, and I did that way too fast. And this was before I was running in ultras. I was running in some zeros. Again, no fault of zeros. My feet were not strong enough to make that transition as fast as I attempted to make it after 50 some years of running with the traditional shoe and with a custom orthotic for 30 some years. So, but in the process, my toes used to be all crunched up. They were just kind of weak, and my foot was weak. My toes have spread out now. My feet are much stronger because of this transition. I wear zero drop shoes 100% of the time. My dress shoes are now zero drop, natural foot shape, and so I've seen a lot of strength in my feet. And again, when we talk about running, but we want running to be able to translate to the rest of our life. So what I do in running, I want to actually help me to live a better life in all areas. So I think having stronger feet has been very helpful to me. But let's get into some of the things, the running form, and see what we've got here. I'm 59 years old at the time of this, 59 and a half. And so obviously a little more limited than I used to be, probably in range of motion, but that's something I want to work on too. So a couple positives here, I think, is what they spoke about here. Let's just let it play for just a second. And you can see I've got a pretty good full foot, midfoot strike. I'm coming down on my midfoot underneath my center of mass. You'll see my leg is bent, my knee is bent, and so some of the big positives about this is you'll see lots of times runners will stretch their legs out to try to get a bigger stride, and they will do heel striking But one of the most detrimental parts of that is not just landing on your heel, but your leg and your knee is in a much more compromised position because your leg is straight out. So the ability for your whole leg to absorb shock is greatly reduced. And that's why a lot of people do get hurt, because in this position here with a bent knee, my whole leg is able to absorb the energy much more efficiently and with a lot less stress on my whole body. So this is, as they say, was very positive, and it's something I took some time to work on well before these guys analyzed it, and one of the things I'm doing well. So I've got the forefoot landing, and right now I'm running at about 8:34 pace, which is a pretty comfortable pace for me. So it's not, I'm not going super fast. So it's going to limit some of the, the foot kick up in the back and the knee drive because of the pace. But those are also some things I can work on even at this pace. And obviously, as you go faster, they become more accentuated. But so along with the landing under center, I've got the full foot landing. I'm not landing on just my forefoot, but I'm doing pretty much a full foot landing, which allows your whole lower leg to not only absorb the energy, but also to return energy. You get elastic recoil when you get your whole leg, all your tendons and fascia and muscles involved. This allows you to do that, and you take a full advantage of all of that. I've heard termed as free energy, when your muscles can load, your tendons can load, your fascia can load, and then you, instead of having to force energy by hitting the ground, you actually get a recoil from that energy. And so in a way, it's a free energy and less muscle driven. The other thing is my cadence is pretty good. I'm running here at this clip at about 180 cadence. And that's very helpful. So basically, two things that you can do to go run faster: have a higher cadence and have a longer stride length. And most people make the mistake that to have a longer stride length, you have to stretch out in front of you. But the reality is you lengthen your stride out the back. And that's as you get more knee drive and you drive your foot into the ground, then the elastic recoil automatically brings your foot up behind you, and you actually go further through the air because of the extending of the leg out the back. Your hip flexors are lengthened, and you have a longer stride because you're really lengthening the stride out the back. And then cadence, we'll see most people run at a cadence under 180, but the elites, even in a marathon, Kipchoge and a lot of top marathons are going to run at a plus 180 and sometimes up at the 190s cadence. And that's the number of steps you take per minute, counting both sides of both feet. Number of steps you take per minute. So 180 is pretty optimal, and there's a couple reasons for that. One thing is, if you go below 180, you'll find that you'll tend to sink more into the ground. You start becoming more like a deflated basketball, and so your feet will hit the ground and your whole body will kind of settle into that position, and then you'll work to take the next step. But you're not getting much elastic recoil from that, and it's kind of a lazy way to run. It's kind of a natural. It's basically, if you've been walking, then we just start running, and we're kind of taking a walking form to our running. But it's not powerful and it's not dynamic. And so what we want to be doing is we want to be more like a super ball. When you throw a super ball on the ground, it just strikes and it bounces back. And in fact, the more force you apply to the ground, when you throw it to the ground, the higher it will bounce, the further it will go. So that's what we want to be doing. But so those are a couple points there. And the other thing is, I've got a pretty decent lean, my whole body lean. I'm not leaning from my waist. You can see I've got a pretty strong up position. I tend to look at the monitor a lot. I'm not sure why, but typically I'm looking straight or a little bit down to the ground, maybe 30 feet ahead of me when I'm outside running. So that's good. So I've got good, strong posture. So those are all positives. Now, on some of the drawbacks that they pointed out is that my knee drive is not too great. So as you'll see here, here's about the extent of my knee drive right there. And you can see that my foot is already starting to drop down to the ground. Instead of being in a figure 4 where my heel is up higher and my knee's still driving forward, my knee is not driving very far forward, and my foot is already starting to come down towards the ground. So I don't get a lot of power off of that and a lot of free energy off of that stride, because when I come down to the ground, I've not really gained a great angle of strength by coming down with more force from a higher level. It's pretty much my feet are never really that far off the ground. So that's one of the things I need to work on. As I drive my knee, not trying to get high knees, but trying to drive my knee forward, then I will get more elastic recoil, and then I will get a lot more of that natural of the foot heel coming up towards your butt. Now again, the pace determines that a lot. At 834 pace, you're not going to have a tremendous amount of butt kick, but you can have more, and it's going to happen naturally. Pose running is not something I believe in. That's more where you're trying to bring your heel up to your butt, and that you're doing that, the way they teach it is you're really trying to use your hamstring to do that. Where if you have knee drive, then you're going to get the automatic elastic recoil by the force that your foot hits the ground, and it will come up automatically as you drive your knee forward. And with the knee drive, you're using your glutes, not your hamstrings. And your glutes are much stronger and much more powerful, and that's really what we want to do. Now, one of the limiters of knee drive is the hip flexor. So if the hip flexors are tight and weak, which at this point in my life, they are pretty tight and weak, and they're things I need to work on as I've learned from this gait analysis. And so the biggest impacts on that is sitting all day tightens up your hip flexors, and it weakens your glutes. So the one thing we can all do is I've got a standing desk behind me, and I try to use as much as I possibly can, because that is allowing our glutes to get stronger and our hip flexors to get lengthened out. So we want strong and lengthened hip flexors and strong glutes. Those are the primary movers. The hip flexors give us the ability to extend our leg out the back and to really create that ricochet. And the glutes give us the power to drive our legs into the ground and to get the elastic recoil going forward. So those are some of the main things we need to be working on. The other thing you can't quite see from here is I don't have any upper body rotation. I'm pretty stiff up top. And what I've learned is that the core rotation actually gives you some additional loaded spring, which helps you run with more force. Again, not using your leg muscles, but using your upper body and your core to get some of that leg drive. So that's something we'll see. The other thing is my arms are more of a gunslinger. You can't quite see it from the side view, but I carry my arms out pretty wide, and I also let them go pretty far in front of me, and I need to keep them both closer to my body. And again, in the next video, as I show you some of my working on my running form and improving my running form, I'll show you what some of those things look like and the differences that they've made and how it's starting to help me run more efficiently. Now, the one thing is I've done 9 marathons primarily with this running form. And this running form is probably improvement over the first couple marathons. But when I get done with a marathon, my quads are absolutely destroyed because I'm running a quad dominant running form. I need to become more glute dominant. I've been noticing as I started to use this new running form with more of a knee drive, that my posterior chain, my glutes, my hamstrings are starting to become more I use them more, and so when I'm running, I will notice more fatigue back there. I also will notice more fatigue or soreness in the next day because I've been using those. So those are the primary things that I wanted to focus on. So this is kind of, again, this is a review of my running form as it is today. Hopefully you can see some things there that are positive that maybe you can apply. The full foot strike, underneath center of gravity, and the forward lean are both positive, and the cadence of 180. So next time what we'll do is I'll film myself with my new form. It's certainly not perfect yet. I'm still working on it. It's only been a couple months, not even a couple months yet that I've been working on a new form. And but we'll see what we can learn from the new form and see if that might help you too. So until next time, hope this helps you.